Hello, everybody. Welcome to an exciting time. This is the first session. This is session 0 of our upcoming Pokemon Tabletop Campaign. And I am super psyched because we have 5 new faces. Well, some newer than others. 5 new faces, many of whom, or all of whom, were chosen by you, the viewers, to be in this campaign. And we're going to just take our time to get to know each other, just get a great feel for, the feel for everybody as people before we actually start diving officially in these campaign. This also will give me a chance to ask them questions, them to ask me questions, so we can have a greater assessment of what to expect out of the Pokemon Tabletop campaign. I will begin by releasing the official name of the campaign, so you can start speculating what this might be about. The name of your campaign is Pokemon Spectrum. Pokemon Spectrum is the name. And for my previous campaigns, Spectrum could be used in many different ways, just like Resurgence was used in many different ways. So there's different reasons for that name. So you can start speculating now what that might apply to. So let's start with some icebreakers. So I want to start with something super easy and just having each of the players introduce themselves. So I would, just to reiterate for those people who have not seen your audition, gasp if they haven't. I'll put links in the bottom if you would like to see their audition when they're, green and bushy-tailed and bushy-eyed and bushy-tailed, or whatever the terminology is. But for each person, I would like for you to remind us what your name is, or at least what you would like to be referred to as moving forward, where you are from, and at least for 3 of you, like how you got into the Pokemon franchise. For the other 2 of you, because the other 2 of you have done a lot of extensive research, which is great. Tell me, what is it about the Pokemon franchise that you find interesting or that you find intriguing that you hopefully will enjoy in this campaign? Okay.
So Nino Texera, I'm from Ontario, Canada. So I wanted to get into this Pokemon campaign because I didn't really know Pokemon, and my nephew's really into it. I know that it's a huge thing for like 20 plus years. And I think it's about time that I learned something from Pokemon. So I love the idea of, the designs themselves are amazing. I was a huge fan of Digimon. So in the interviews and the auditions, I talked about Digimon and why I love Digimon. And it's the idea of like the partnership and creating those bonds. And I always like the idea of like the spirit animal, that kind of idea. So that's kind of meaningful to me, and that's hopefully I get to explore a bit of those ideas in this game.
Yeah, you all can call me Roma. I was originally from the US, but I've been living in South Korea for the past 5 years. I first got into Pokemon when I got the game. I got Pokemon Red for Christmas one year, and along with my first Game Boy. And so I played through that. I've been playing through most of the games. I kind of skipped over Diamond and Pearl and Black and White, but I got back into the series with X and Y and Sun and Moon. And for me, I like the exploration. I like the finding out what works in your team and what doesn't work. And yeah, I like the exploration of it.
I'm Petra, or Sylph. Either's fine. Actually, with some of the tabletop, people just start calling me by a character's name, Tiff. That's also fine. I don't come into this knowing a lot about Pokemon. My experience is like late 90s, early 2000s. My nieces and nephews watched it. So I have a lot to learn, clearly. But I have seen Let's Plays of the different games, and one of the things I really love are the little meta-narratives all the YouTubers and other Let's Players come up with. To me, that's almost as much fun, if not funner, than some of the stories being told in the game.
I'm Ella. My YouTube name's Library of Alexandra. I'm from Australia. I'm really interested about Pokemon, and what interests me most about it is just because it reminds me of family and stuff, and also I like all like little theories people come up with about the games, and like little hidden subtexts and stuff. It's quite interesting. Just investigate all that and go, oh, there's more. Just keep researching.
So yeah, my real name is Dean, but I'm more commonly known as Riz, and that is what I would prefer to go by here, I think. Sometimes I do go by my character name too, but I think Cassandra in this case would be a little odd. So let's not do that. I got into Pokemon years ago, like when I was really young, back in preschool or kindergarten. I don't remember which, but we had a yellow version cartridge, and that was the first one we had. And so I had to race my older brother home basically to see who would get to play it like first that day, until finally I got my own red version. And I've played one of each game in each generation except for the 4th gen with Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. I started one of those, but I just never ended up finishing it because I missed the hype. I didn't have a DS at the time. But I've always enjoyed, kind of like the mystery of like seeing, what Pokemon will evolve into. I think that the lore in like the Pokedex entries is really interesting, and like other theories that people come up with like, who's Cubone's mother and things like that. I've always enjoyed not competitive battling, but just, like building my team. Usually kind of the first Pokemon I come across in my journey that just catch my attention, and just developing the bonds with them. And it's been a lot of fun throughout the years. I'm currently playing Pokemon Sun, so I'm still actively involved, at least in the games. And happy to be a part of this. Right now, I'm in the Mountain Time Zone. I'm living in Utah, but I'll be moving to Georgia pretty soon. So don't get used to this background.
Yeah, one thing I absolutely love about this group is that the players are from all around the world, which makes scheduling this really difficult.
I was gonna say, is that something you like?
Well, it's something I right now like. The fact that I'm waking up at 7 a.m. is not something I'm liking. Although Riz it's a little bit after. It's just 7 o'clock in his time. He was up at 4 a.m. though. But hopefully when he moves, that won't be a problem.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we have people from the western coast of America all the way to Australia and Korea, and everywhere in between. So thank you guys for being willing to participate this and adjusting your schedules to allow for everybody else. Because I really wanted the 5 of you specifically, if possible, to play this game. So I'm super excited. Let me introduce myself too, for those of you who have never been to my channel, if you don't know me. Hi, my name is Angel Arts. My real name is Hark. I've been GMing for 10 years now, 12 years now. It's been a while. And started with, Dungeons and Dragons, worked my way through Pathfinder and various other, other tabletop games ranging from Star Wars to Masquerade of the Vampire to the GURPS. Like there's a GURPS system that I did, and then most recently started doing campaigns online on my channel, starting with the Dragon Age campaign season 1s and 2, as well as a Mass Effect campaign. So this is actually my 4th campaign that I'm posting on my channel. As far as my Pokemon background, I kind of sort of want to be a little bit hipster and say that I was a Pokemon fan before it was even known what Pokemon was in America. I actually had started reading articles on this new game that Japan was coming out, where they had multiple cartridges and all of these creatures that you could catch and level up, and different creatures appeared in different cartridges. I read that way before I think even Pokemon, the name of Pokemon was remotely a household name in America. And then when I realized it was coming to America and there was going to be a cartoon about it, I was psyched. And so when the Pokemon anime came out, that was my very first experience with the franchise. Obviously, I ended up getting the game later. Pokemon Yellow is definitely one of my favorites just because I definitely prefer electric types over fire, water, or grass. So I was happy to have a Pikachu following me around in Pokemon Yellow. Played the snot out of Pokemon Silver and Gold. and I have played all through each generation up to the Platinum, Pokemon Platinum, which includes Fire Red, Leaf Green, Heart Gold, Soul Silver. So I've played through all of those games. So I do admit that I have not, unfortunately, played through. Well, I have played through Black and White, Black White / Black 2 White 2, but I have not played any of X and Y or Sun and Moon, unfortunately. But I've watched some people play them. Riz, I'm actually sort of semi-watching his Let's Play right now. So the reason why I wanted to make the setting of Pokemon in Kanto is because that for many people was the very first world that they have dived into the franchise, because that was the world of the first game. And it's also a region that I'm very familiar with. And so the campaign might borrow some elements from X and Y, and from Sun and Moon, but just because I actually am more knowledgeable of it, I probably will be more generous in taking things from the generations that I've actually played. So that's my Pokemon background. Yeah, so hopefully you guys will enjoy watching Riz's cat.
Yes.
Who sort of looks like the creature on his shirt, but cool. So let's move on. I'm going to ask some more icebreakers. The next icebreaker I wanted to ask is, if you so separate yourself from your player character, from your PC. Let's say you personally were a person living in the Pokemon universe, in the Pokemon world, as yourself. What do you see yourself? First of all, do you know what type of Pokemon you might own? And what do you see yourself doing? Like, what kind of occupation do you think you would be doing in this Pokemon universe?
Well, if I was in the Pokemon universe, probably be an archaeologist, to be honest. There's
A
a lot
what?
of ruins. An archaeologist.
Archaeologist. Okay.
There's a lot of ruins there. It'd be quite interesting. Definitely have an Eevee, because Eevees are adorable and they look the most like my pets in real life. So I would probably go with that. Not sure which region. If they ever come up with a Pokemon game which is based in Australia, that region, but I don't know, maybe Nova. Probably get tricked into joining some weird Team Plasma, because I totally believe these people was like, oh, we have to free the Pokemon. That's wonderful. And get sucked into it because I'm an idiot. I'm very naive sometimes. Not as naive as some of my characters I make, though. And
Yeah.
I'm just going to stop talking.
Okay, thank you, Ella. Who would like to go next?
Which Pokemon have? I'd probably go with my one I said for my interview, RP, which is a Chansey, because I'm very klutzy and I'm forever bruising and injuring myself. So something that can heal me, that really likes me and wants to help me, perfect.
Yes.
As for what I'd be doing, I'd like to think I'd still be doing the same things, writing, translation work, that sort of thing. Trying to be a YouTuber.
Trying to be a YouTuber, fair enough.
I think that if I were in the Pokemon world, I probably would have jumped on the bandwagon and started my adventure early on, assuming that that's what you mean by actually being in the Pokemon world. Yeah.
And by early on, you mean before you're 10? Is that what you mean by early on?
Or, well, at the normal age you see in the anime and everything.
Age.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not those kindergartners running around. I don't understand that in the games. But yeah,
my Rattatas better than your Rattata.
At that age in particular, I absolutely would have wanted to go out on an adventure, with my friends and everything. If I had a choice, with my mindset now, Vulpix is my favorite. I'm gonna pick it no matter what. I kind of shape my character around having a Vulpix. So, but given what starting Pokemon you usually see, I mean in the games especially, but even in the anime, I think a little more limited. So. Hard to say, but yeah, I think it would have completely changed the way I'm living if we had such a different world. So I don't think that I would still be doing the same kind of thing that I'm doing today. I think I'd be a completely different person, to be perfectly honest.
Hmm.
In a bad way, I don't think so necessarily, but in a completely different world, I think that it would make sense that with all those new experiences and everything, I would be shaped differently too. But yeah.
Yeah, so again, I'm kind of with Petha here. I'm don't know much about the lore, but I do know that as a kid, I really liked exploring. I liked just going to places that I shouldn't be, abandoned places, stuff like that, forests. So I think in this world where it's okay to kind of wander off as a 10-year-old to do very crazy things and climb mountains and capture creatures that could kill you. I don't know if I'd go that far as a 10-year-old. I'd start maybe later in life. I also love road tripping, so I feel like I guess something like a bird Pokemon, like a Santina or something like that. Just kind of scout ahead, just make sure there isn't a Pokemon out there that can kill me. But I would like to. I'd be an explorer, I think, if anything.
All right, so that leaves me, I guess. So for me, I guess I would, as far as what Pokemon I would have, I think I would have anything that would help me travel quickly. And so Crobat is my favorite Pokemon, and that's why I base my character around it. But if I really was in the Pokemon universe, I would try to have maybe any kind of flying Pokemon, any way for me to get around quickly. And the reason why I want to travel a lot is because my major is linguistics, and so part of why I came to Korea in the first place was because I wanted to learn more about different languages. And so I think in the Pokemon universe, I might try to see how I might do research about how Pokemon could potentially speak to humans or something similar to that, or research how Pokemon speak to each other. I think I would be,
I like
I think
that.
that's the kind of research field I would be in.
Awesome, awesome. And I'll answer that question as well. So, as some of you might know, I'm a major foodie, huge foodie, and so if I were to pick an occupation in the Pokemon universe, I really would love to be sort of like a Pokemon nutritionist or a chef that specializes in preparing meals, really awesome meals for Pokemon. I think it'd just be really neat just to be able to research all of the different diets because you've got diets from Pokemon ranging from Pokeberries to Poffins to garbage apparently. Sylphwind. So trying to be able to cater to all of those different tastes, and trying to help expose Pokemon to be more adventurous. Because that's, as a foodie, I always try to encourage people to not knock something until you try it, no matter how weird or odd it might be. So I see myself doing something along those lines, like Pokemon culinary. As for what Pokemon I would have, geez. Well, my favorite type tends to be electric, but I don't know if that would necessarily go with my occupation. Um, but I always told people I might cheat a little bit because this is legendary. But I always told people that my favorite Pokemon of all time is Jirachi. Part of it a shiny Jirachi because it's orange, and I love the color orange. But that's a legendary. So if I wanted to pick another one, I feel like picking Ditto would be cheating too, because everybody wants to pick Ditto because you can have every Pokemon if it's a Ditto. Um, for right now, I'm gonna say I don't know. I always like Togepi. I always like Togepi. It's just really adorable. Uh, I have tons of Pikachu stuffed animals, and while Pikachu definitely is one of my favorite Pokemon, Togepi for me edges him a little bit. So I'll say Togepi. I can see him as my little assistant, my sous chef. So cool. Um, Let me start putting people on the spot before I start asking more questions. I'll start with Roma. Hi, Roma.
Hi.
So, Roma, I want to start by saying that everybody, as I said before during the auditions, all of the finalists were asked to select which other players they wanted on their group. I think you were the one that most people chose to be in their
Really?
group. Yes, I believe so. a lot of people had you on their list. I was very impressed by you. I think within the first 5 seconds of your audition, not your interview, your audition. As soon as you opened your mouth, I was like, huh. There's something about this girl I really like.
The
You were just
tongue.
very. I'm sorry. What?
The tongue.
The what? Okay.
The tongue.
Oh.
First 5 seconds, open your mouth. I'm sorry, I'll mute.
Okay. Thank you. No, but Roma, I found you were very poised. You expressed all of your thoughts very clearly. It was, I don't want to say professionally done because it was more personal than professional, but there was just something about you that immediately drew the viewer in. I think a lot of people could relate to you very easily because you seem to have a very approachable personality, and that's what I like to try to put into my campaign. So you were, as soon as I saw your audition, I told myself I'd be shocked if she doesn't get in, like super shocked, and I'd be super shocked if other viewers and other players didn't feel the same way, and I was right. So thank you for auditioning, Roma.
Well, it's good to hear that. And it's been crazy going through this whole process, like going from voting which campaign would be your next one to getting the email that I was in. It's all been crazy and wonderful and amazing, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I'd like to believe that everybody here and everyone's watching is happy to have you. I'd like to believe that.
Well, thanks.
Okay. Ella, let's move on to you. Ella, I have to tell you, I was super excited to see you audition for Pokemon United because you were so close to getting into Dragon Age Season 2. Like, I wanted you to get into that campaign so badly, but I couldn't put a sixth person in. It was just too much. And so I was very excited to have your character participate in the one-shot session in Dragon Age Resurgence, and you did fantastically. I was not surprised at how well you played your character and just how well you got along with all of the other players. And just seeing you audition for this campaign, again, I didn't want to necessarily she obviously almost got into the Dragon Age Resurgence campaign, so surely, I'm going to put her into this campaign by default. I wanted to be fair to everybody, but I felt that you earned your way in.
Pokemon's a very different beast.
Pokemon's a really different beast, and I felt that you earned your way in to this campaign. I know that you mentioned in your interview that you didn't like that you were flailing your arms around all the time. If you remember that, you should not be ashamed. I'm gonna tell you that was the part of you that I liked, Ella. I found that part of you endearing. So you should not be ashamed of it. You should not try to suppress it, because that's what I want from you. You can decide for yourself if you want to let that part of you out, but that is what drew me to you. And to be honest, I kind of wanted more of that from you during your auditions. So don't be ashamed of it. I liked you the way you were. Don't be afraid of it. That's what I want. So don't be embarrassed. I find that part of you is the part that I liked. So I'll pick on Riz. Why don't I pick on you, Riz? So Riz,
Yes.
a lot of people watching know that you and I are good friends. So
This is true.
even though you and I are good friends, I told you specifically you still have to audition just like everybody else.
And I told you to judge me just as harshly.
And I did.
Good.
Yes, I did. But I wasn't sure if Riz was even going to be interested in auditioning in the first place. Like, I knew that Riz did tabletop, or at least he did role-playing.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew he loved Pokemon, because I actually asked him if he was interested in auditioning for Dragon Age Season 2. But I figured that he didn't really know Dragon Age as well.
Not at all.
Now that we're doing Pokemon, I thought maybe that would be something that he was more interested in. So I was actually very semi-pleasantly surprised when I saw the audition from him. But
When I messaged you the night before auditions are due.
yes. But Riz just carries himself so well. I have so much respect for the man. When I met him in person, he was pretty much exactly the same way in person for the most part as he is on YouTube. He's just very genuinely nice guy. Sometimes he scares me when he rants about Life is Strange, but
I'm sorry. It has to be said.
yes. Yeah, and you know, I just felt like he would be a very good fit. He knows Pokemon very well, way more than I do. And so I see myself leaning on him a lot when I'm, you know, checking up on something like, is this legit? Like, is this something that actually is a thing, or is this accurate in the Pokemon universe? So yes, if you need to borrow notes from Riz or ask questions from Riz, he's probably one of the more learned people in Pokemon. Not to say that Ella and Roma don't know their stuff either, but I know that Riz has definitely immersed himself in it a lot. So thank you, Riz.
No
for
problem. We can tag team if need be.
Okay. I'll move on to Petra. That sounds natural, considering how Petra is also a finalist from Resurgence. Petra, you're a writer. I know that when you get into something, despite the fact that you don't know the lore very well or at all when you started, that you would work really hard to research everything and anything that you needed to get yourself prepared for this, because that's just the kind of person you are. I knew that you would take the campaign very seriously. I knew that you would be very passionate about the campaign. Take this as a compliment, but you're also a very entertaining person to watch.
Aw, thank you.
Just the way that you express your thoughts, the way that you talk, the way that you role play. You're very creative. I love how, you know, the little things like with Rovas, your Resurgence character, the fact that you name your swords, one of your swords, Lovely, is just little details like that I find really amazing. And just listening to Tiffany's backstory and Ew's backstory, the fact that you named it Ew, and even just the whole story of how Ew's name came to be was just very well done. And I thought that this would be a really great challenge for you because it's new
Mildly,
stuff.
yes.
But I also felt that you would play off of the other players well as well.
I hope so.
So I hope I thank you for auditioning. I hope you'll have a good time.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
And last but not least, we are to Shay. Hi, Shay. So between you and Roma, you both had the highest number of thumbs up. I'll start by saying that. I think that you did have an advantage in that, just like Riz, you're comfortable in front of the camera. You're a YouTuber. You do Let's Plays, and therefore, you know, the way you present yourself was done very well. Your equipment setup is great, except for, you know, when your microphone dies on you.
Yes.
And I think that's what drew a lot of people towards you. And just your attitude, just like Petra, your attitude towards still wanting to audition for this, despite the fact that you don't know the source material as well, and how much you still got into, you know, learning about ghost Pokemon and trying to figure out, you know, the backstory of your character. Like, that's the kind of drive that I really wanted. The fact that you also are very experienced with tabletop gaming is an advantage and a disadvantage for you. It's an advantage because you're experienced in role playing. It's a disadvantage because I try really hard to use these campaigns as a way to expose people who normally don't have as much of an opportunity to role play. I try to extend myself to help them have that chance to role play. So putting you in this campaign was I had to make a very big decision of, you know, was I willing to let you take the slot so that some other person couldn't take that slot? I mean, that's a hard decision to make. Putting both you and Petra here was something that I was anxious about, because not only am I putting one person that doesn't know Pokemon very well and putting two people in that doesn't know Pokemon very well, and I know that I was trying really hard to just put one or the other in. Like you and for a while I was trying to decide who's going to get in. Is it going to be Petra? Is it going to be Shay? Because I would love to not give that slot to somebody who isn't a big giant Pokemon fan. But after hearing a lot of feedback, not only from the viewers but also from the players, the finalists, I ended up deciding I'll take you both and maybe do something extra for some of the other players, which is why I'm doing the one-shot session with the non-finalists. For non-finalists, I'm doing a session in order to, I guess, make up for the fact that you guys squeezed in. So
Yeah, I totally felt like that was going to be a struggle for you for sure. And I'll be honest, I felt a little bit bad for it, but at the same time, it was really for me to just try to audition for something, because I've never done online gaming, and I've never really played. So it was one of those, what can it hurt? And if anything, maybe I can encourage other people to just try out for your audition. So
yeah,
that was my angle. Yeah. It was very kind of you, though, to open it up for the one shots. Like when I heard that announcement, I was like, "Oh, that was pretty cool. That was pretty nice to be there." Yeah.
So, I thank you for auditioning. As soon as I started watching your other videos before I even announced this campaign, I thought it would be really cool to just get to know you as a person, all of you, all 5 of you, as people more. Especially you, Rez, total stranger that you are. So. Kermit arm flails for the win. Cool. All right. Well, that's enough of me talking. Now I want to hear more of you guys talking. So here's a question I like to ask on every single session 0. And I want you to think hard on this, because I have notes right now that I'm writing down throughout the rest of this session 0. So the rest of this session, before we actually start working on our characters, is a chance for me to ask you questions that I need to ask so I know how to go about this campaign. The biggest challenge with Pokemon Tabletop is that you can really take this universe anywhere. With Dragon Age, like that's pretty much established what Dragon Age is. I mean, first of all, it's fantasy genre. Mass Effect, sci-fi genre. And again, that universe is very well established. Pokemon is also established, but as a tabletop campaign, I could go sci-fi with it. I could go fantasy with it. I could go. There's so many different genres and themes that I could go with this campaign. So this gives me a chance to ask you the questions that I need to figure out how to design this campaign and how to design this story in a way that you as the players are interested in. Because I try to craft each campaign based on what the players are looking for and what the players want. So my question to you right now is, what do you personally, what are you looking for? What do you want out of this campaign? What are you looking for in this campaign? What are some of your expectations, I guess? And in addition to that, what are you hoping to get from each other? What are you hoping to get from the other players and myself as a GM?
So I like the idea of an episodic approach to things. So I imagine this particular campaign having the opportunity to be kind of like a TV show, where you have, like, if it's a season of 22 episodes, it's episodic, but then there's that through line that wraps up near the end. And I like the idea of it being like, if you think of like a Buffy or an Angel or a Firefly, like a Whedonverse-esque kind of angle to it, where the characters themselves guide the story, and the personas that they develop and how they interact with each other. I think that there's something that storytelling is, I think, what I'm interested in. So it's kind of having that tapestry around that the episodic but through line approach. Yeah, I mean, like in terms of sci-fi, fantasy, horror, I think, like you said, this game has the option to go any which way. I particularly like horror, but that's it doesn't need to be a Walking Dead style horror, like a gore-esque horror, but Just something with a little bit more of a supernatural bent to it. I'm a little bit selfish there because of the Pokemon I chose, but yeah, there you go.
The episodic approach was something I was definitely looking into as well, because I felt that I want to pull back a bit in the story. I want it to be more of an intimate story than I have done in the past. I want it to be less about let's go save the world and more about like some of the day-to-day issues that characters in this universe might be facing and how they deal with such issues. So that's the approach that I think you guys would appreciate. And by all means, you can let me know, give me feedback on that as you continue telling me what your expectations are.
I'm 100% right there with Shay. I would love something episodic. I am very much character first. Plot is nice, but I want the character stuff, especially with how I tend to RP. Expectations, I just want to hang out with cool people, get to play my character, get to tell a fun story or a sad story. I don't know yet. We'll see, which is part of the fun right now. What I want from each other, from you, again, just a chance to RP, a chance to make some more friends, a chance to keep growing.
Yes, characters driven is something I want to do more of in this campaign than I have in the past. I have written the spare bones like exoskeleton of the overall story, but it's very, very minimal. And I did that on purpose because I want the meat of it to be driven by the characters. Normally what I end up doing is when I write a campaign, I plan out roughly like this in this session this major thing happens, in this session this major happens, da 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 da. I haven't done that for this campaign specifically because I want to see what happens in session 1. And then based on what happens in session 1, then I'll design session 2, and based on what happens in session 2, I'll design session 3, which is scary for me because I kind of want to have a bit of a plan. But if I really am truly making this character driven, I have to get rid of that safety net and just let you take me where you want to go. And then I just populate the areas that you want to go. So that's the approach I'm taking for this one.
For me, I like the idea of a character-driven story. For me, characters are always the most important thing in a story, because if I don't care about the characters, I'm not going to care about the story. You know? So I hope that we've talked about this in the chat room a little bit. Like, I wouldn't mind having a big bad or a saving the world thing, but at the same time, I feel like our ragtag group would not be able to handle something so big. I mean, maybe as the story goes on, they'd be able to later, but as I see them right now, I don't know if they would be able to. So seeing something that's more personal, I think would be more realistic in that sense. But and in terms of what I want, like, this is my first ever, not just my first campaign. This is my first dive into tabletop gaming. You know, just tabletop RPGs. So yeah, I just hope that I can. I cannot think of a better group to start with. I can't think of a better GM to start with. And I hope you guys can tolerate me and deal with my mistakes, because I'm sure there will be a lot of them. But yeah, I'm excited. This is very exciting.
When you were talking about you don't mind having there be a big bad, but maybe with your ragtag group you might not be able to handle something that big. Again, with this campaign, I was trying to figure out what level of supernatural to introduce, because in Pokemon there's a lot of supernatural things that do occur, paranormal things that occur, as well as a lot of techie things occur. So I do think that there will be a good amount of paranormal and supernatural and sci-fi-ish elements, but at the same time, I also want to try to keep things grounded as much as possible and just let those elements guide what's happening and not overpower what's happening. So again, it's again trying to pull back a little bit versus something that's more fantastical, like what's been going on in Resurgence, in the Dragon Age series, and in the Mass Effect series?
Well, one for the campaign, just fun, like character interactions. Love to see how all the characters interact, see how they bounce off each other, if they disagree on certain things, like work through that, or if they agree on things. Yeah, there's interesting dynamics with that. Supernatural and horror stuff would be cool, because yeah, Pokemon that surprisingly well lends itself to that. And what I want from other players, just to have fun, but be enjoyable experience.
One of the things that I think is challenging for me as a GM is that Ella, your character is probably the most paranormal or supernatural in the group because you are a psychic, and the challenge is I want to make sure that that aspect of your character doesn't overshadow everybody else, because I could, as a GM, balance things by giving everybody like supernatural abilities. I could do that, but I feel like that may not be what the players want necessarily. So I'm trying to find that balance of making sure that every character has a chance to shine and that your character's abilities doesn't overshadow everybody else, because I think that if I'm wrong, please tell me, that the players want to show how normal people in this universe can affect the universe without having to have psychic powers or things like that. Am I right or am I wrong? I want to know feedback. Like, do you guys want superpowers? But that wasn't what I was going for. Yeah, I can see Riz shaking his head, because I actually had this conversation with Riz as well. So, but I think that having your character in there definitely spices things a lot in a good way. So
she's definitely going to have her weaknesses and strengths. Just to say, like, she's not going to be the brightest intellectual person. So
right.
If you go research this or know this fact, just
right.
If I can read their mind, I might know the answer. I don't know the answer currently, though.
Can your character read minds yet? Are you a mind reader?
Yes.
Oh.
At first thought,
okay.
She can be a mind reader, but she's not going to advertise that to everyone she meets.
Of course not. Of course not.
Because that creeps people out.
Okay. So that'll be a big challenge for me is trying to balance everybody's characters across the board. So I'm pointing that out so that everybody in the group is mindful of that, and we can all hopefully together just keep that on the back of our heads when we're going through the sessions.
All right, time to leech off everyone else. So I do also like the idea of the episodic, but having something tie everything together. So even if there's not a big bad, having something that's, connecting everything would be nice, however background or foreground or whatever. I think that we all agree that character interaction and development is probably the most important thing to us. I would say it is for me too, so that's good. And as for the elements, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, whatever, like you said, they all exist there, and I think that they should all be shown here, however backgroundish they may be, just because they are so prevalent in the Pokemon world that, and kind of including, Ella's character too, those things exist. And, some people might still, of course, be baffled by some of the things, but they exist, they're known to exist, and it's not necessarily as mind-blowing as it would be for us to have those kinds of things in the world. Because as far as the technology goes, as far as the supernatural goes, so even if we said no characters could have psychic powers, there's still Pokemon who can do incredible things, psychic or otherwise. So since they managed in the show and the games and everything to balance it, I have great faith in you. Mine's just I don't think that we need to necessarily have a huge emphasis on one aspect just to include it. Because I think that the world naturally provides a way to include kind of everything, you know what I mean? And I'm sure you were asking for a broader focus too, or opposite of broader. But yeah, so I don't think I really have any other thoughts on that.
What do you expect from everybody else, Riz? What are your expectations from us as a group?
I expect you guys to do your best. That's what I expect. You know, if you don't do that, I'll be disappointed. But as long as I know you're trying, I don't know. I'm looking forward to this. You know, I think it's going to be a fun time. You know, just briefly talking to people. Everyone seems cool. So, yeah, I guess I should probably voice my biggest concern right now, which you can easily make me feel better about, is how we're all going to get together and how we're all going to, so much pressure, must do my best. How we're all going to get together and how we're all going to stay together.
Yes.
Because
yes.
once we do that, I think that, you know, because then drama can come up and that spices things up and everything. And, you know, then the characters will just have to work out the challenges. But the issue that I always worry about is how, we all just, you know, first, come together in the first place toward a common goal or whatever. And then how we don't hate each other right away, but as soon as we're done with that, we like move on.
Yes.
So that'll be fun. I think that'll be like a big part of doing that will be the underlying, like the through line of the plot.
Yeah.
I would imagine. Like that's the thing that'll keep us kind of glued together. But then, I'm really looking forward to the little personal stuff that comes up too, the more slice of life day-to-day things.
Yes, slice of life day-to-day things is a good way to see it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Riz, that the hardest thing, I think, especially in the beginning of the campaign, is for a GM is figuring out how to get you guys together and how to get you guys to stay together. That last part is the hardest part.
Yeah. Because you can have, it's like, you all meet in a tavern, but...
Yes. This isn't a spoiler, because at least most of you probably would be expecting this anyway. I spent many hours. The first thing I did before I did anything else was write everybody's origin stories. Many hours. And so getting you together was easier than I thought. Having you guys stay together, that's the part that I'm still working on.
Because the plot demands it.
Because the plot demands.
We'll try to help, of course.
Yes, we'll try to help. My expectations going in. So what I normally always say, and this is true for every different campaign, my expectation is for this to be a teamwork effort. I may be the GM, but I will lean on you guys and rely on you guys to sell the story as much as you guys might do the same for me. I would like for everybody, obviously, to be respectful, be kind to each other, you know, be communicative, open communication, fearless communication. And that doesn't just go with you guys, the players, but also to me. I've been a GM for, like I said, at least 10 years. And I know that a lot of people really like to audition for my campaigns. I know a lot of people have said they enjoy my campaigns, and people have said they enjoy my DMing. But despite that, I, of all people, know I'm not the perfect GM. I know that I make mistakes. I know that I still have a lot to learn. And I learned something with every single campaign. I learned a lot in Resurgence. I learned a lot in the Mass Effect campaign that I'm going to try to take those lessons learned and bring them to here. So I'm continually evolving, I had to throw that in there, as a GM. And one of the things that I want to try to do more of in this campaign is to check up on you guys individually, just to ask how things are going. Like, are you guys enjoying the campaign? If not, or what are some of the things about the campaign you want to try to improve? If it's something that I can do from my end, if it's something that the players might do that I can just say as a group, say, hey, can we try doing this just to help improve things a bit? I'm going to try to be more aggressive about just asking you outright if there's some things that can be improved. And I'll try to address them as best as I can to improve as much as I am able to improve. My expectation is that you guys, that we can all establish a level of trust in each other, a trust in me. I will try my hardest to tell you everything you should know. If you ask me a question, I will try to answer it to the best of my ability. If I don't answer your question completely, it might be because I'm trying to avoid spoilers. I'm trying to avoid spoiling something for you. And so there is a level of, I mean, I've done that with some of you with some of the tweaks I've made. Like, there's a reason why I'm doing this, and hopefully it'll make more sense. And hopefully when you find out what the reason is, that it's legitimate for you and that you're not upset that I hid that from you and all that good stuff. If there's a problem, if you guys really have a problem with something, I want to be able to trust that you'll come to me too, and not wait for me to come to you. Obviously, I'll try to come to you, but you have to meet me halfway as well. Because I want to make sure that you guys are enjoying yourselves. I want to make sure that you're happy, and I want to make sure I'm doing a decent job. So please, please, please do not be shy. I'd like to try to think that I'm approachable. Please don't be shy to approach me if you need to talk to me about anything. I think that's another big major expectation. So yeah, that's what I've got with that.
I've decided science.
You decided science?
Thinking about it more, if I have to narrow my focus down what I would want, largely due to character backstory, and because Pokemon, it does involve everything. I'm not going back on that, but it is predominantly fantasy. And so I like seeing how things might be scientifically explained. But that's all. Okay, silence now.
I have that in my notes, science. Cool, cool. All right. Another question that I had is, percentage-wise, how much emphasis would you like there to be on the character that you're playing versus the Pokemon that you have?
I don't know if I want to say a percentage flat out, but I think that this should be more focused on the characters. But because all of them, at least so far, or at least we could see them having like such a big bond, the Pokemon I think are going to come naturally involved in it. So what do you guys think?
Percentage is hard. An ideal world, 50-50, but again, so much of how I see Tiffany is how she's going to be reacting to you and what is he doing? Why are you doing that? Stop it, or keep doing that.
So they're kind of linked regardless.
Yeah. Also, really curious to see who's going to play them and how they're going to do that, because they have to play off of me.
We're going to get to that really soon, yes. So it sounded like your gut reaction was 50-50.
Yeah.
Which is different from Riz's gut reaction of more of an emphasis on the character. Who else wants to give something? Because there is a big difference between 50-50 and more emphasis on the character.
Yeah, I think I'd go 70-30 myself. It's I feel like, and only because I feel like even if the characters get more screen time, I think just by default those Pokemon are going to have, and because we get to play different Pokemon, like not the one we're bonded to, I think that's going to inevitably be part of scenes. And so focusing just on the Pokemon, I don't think it reverses the same way. Like, I don't think we can all play Pokemon and then have the characters play a part in the Pokemon's journey or adventures. So I think that's more like, it's more of a, like, where do I want the focus on the storytelling? I think it needs to be driven by characters and let the Pokemon be supporting cast sort of thing. It's always like, even if you think about the episodic thing again, like there's that 1 or 2 episode where it's like it's the Pokemon going on an adventure, and it's like it's the stuff that they do without their partners knowing or whatever. So that's gut feeling right there.
I just wanted to say I agree with like maybe having like a one session where it's like Pokemon go and like have their own little adventure about the trainers, because they might get separated or something. Yeah, that could always be fascinating. But I think the focus should definitely be mainly on the trainers. The Pokemon will probably still like inevitably have a lot of influence there, but we're not going to always know what the Pokemon are saying. So it would have to be percentage-wise less.
Yeah, I think too that wait, what was it exactly that I thought? Oh yeah, I think too that if you find a particularly strong kind of little subplot line with one of the Pokemon in particular, yeah, by all means, go after that. But I still think more human central.
Yeah, I think it depends on the individual Pokemon storyline. So for example, I see a lot of growth potential for both Molly and Bullet. And we've talked about some of that in the chat. I think that depending on how much we want ourselves or how much we want the Pokemon to change, then I think there should be equal emphasis depending on the character, I'd say. Okay. So for me, maybe I'll say I'll say 55-45 for character and Pokemon.
Yes. So just so you guys know what I'm thinking at the moment, my plan as a GM is I'm going to start focusing predominantly, at least in session 1 and the earlier sessions, I'm going to start by focusing predominantly on the character first. Pokemon will still appear. Your Pokemon will still appear, but I want to hone in and make sure that as a GM and as you as players have a full understanding of the character first, because I want that to be the anchor. And then gradually, as the story progresses, start delving more and more into the actual Pokemon that they possess. The reason why I want to do it that way is because if I'm trying to split, for example, let's say your origin stories. If I'm trying to split your origin stories such that 50% of the time is focusing on the character and 50% of the time is focusing on the Pokemon, that's 10 characters that I need to introduce and establish in session 1 before you even meet each other. So that spreads that session really thin, as opposed to just 5 characters in one session that I can really establish strongly, and then later on establish their supporting Pokemon, if that makes sense. So that's sort of why I'm trying to take that approach, because I feel like, at least with the questionnaires you gave me, you spent a little bit more time really figuring out your character. And, you thought about your Pokemon too, but I think that it'll be easier for you as players. It's going to be hard enough for you to feel your way through your main character in the first place. Forcing you to establish 2 characters from the get-go right away, I think, is just too much. So that's why I'm hoping that we'll be able to make that work with the first few sessions, and then maybe later on it'll be closer to, I want to say 60-40. I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where it absolutely is 50-50. I do want to do some sessions that are focused on the Pokemon only, like have them maybe go off and do their own little subplot while the owners are doing whatever on their own, to compensate for that. So, but we'll figure that out, because I haven't even figured out what that is yet, because again, I'm just going to be at the mercy of wherever it is you guys are trying to take the story. So owners are bickering, let's get out of here. It's like, time out, let's time out. We'll just let them do their thing and we'll go off and wander into this abandoned warehouse, shall we? So I don't know why I really want to go in, but I just feel like my day will be so much more interesting if I just go into this abandoned warehouse.
I bet it's just Lux peer pressuring everyone.
Yes.
Like, no, guys, this will be fun.
I've asked a lot of questions, so I want to give you guys a chance to ask me questions as a GM.
I have a comment just to what you just said about the Pokemon and how it splits and how they get screen time, especially if it gets front loaded. I think I think some, not apprehension, but it's the learning curve of having to play another person's Pokemon. I think it's because that's a collaborative relationship. It's not like playing your Pokemon so that you can identify with that Pokemon and you have your own story to tell with your Pokemon. It's like, I think we all kept our Pokemon very vague in our origins, so that because we knew other players were going to bring their take to that Pokemon. And I think that's the important part of that relationship, is that 2 players are actually working to play the one character. So I think we need to have time to create that bond with the player to player, so that we can understand what story we want to tell with their Pokemon. And I think that's probably one of the leading reasons why I auditioned for this campaign. I think that's such an intriguing, like, there's some possibilities there that could surprise the player, and collaborative storytelling is really.
Once we establish or assign who's going to play which Pokemon, obviously I would love for you guys, while we're waiting for session 1, to talk with your partner and sort of like get a very rough idea of what your dynamics with each other are like and what your relationship is like. But nothing beats figuring that out when you're actually role playing. Like, you can plan everything in the world about what your relationship is like. It's not going to be expect that to evolve when you're actually at the tabletop. So one of the things, yes, I know I'm going to use the word evolve a lot. The entire spectrum of words that involve evolving. But the first few sessions I'm seeing is a chance to try to allow you as players figure out and establish what exactly is the relationship like with your character and your Pokemon. I will have moments. I'm trying to fit in moments with just you and your Pokemon in session 1 as I can fit them. But if I don't get to it, just expect that to happen more in session 2 and 3, for example. Just because I don't want our session to be like 10 hours long, because I know you'd appreciate if it wasn't that long. As far as tone, here's a big question mark for me. Pokemon traditionally is very lighthearted. It's very whimsical. It doesn't take itself too seriously. There are some moments where, they start going into the fields department, and you all know how terrible I am at the fields department, but I'll try. I guess my big question to you is, my intention for this again is to be a Pokemon campaign story for adults. So I would like to delve into darker themes. I'd like to delve into more mature themes. I just trying to get a pulse from the room, like how dark is too dark, or how mature is too mature. Where are the boundaries, I guess, is my big question. You don't have to give any specific things, but I'm just trying to get an idea of what the comfort level is, just so that I know what box I have to play with, if that makes sense. Some of you might be like, maturity, darkness, just lay it on me, whatever. However far you want to go.
Yes.
But I don't know but I don't know about how everybody really feels. So does anyone have any thoughts about that? About what they are? Or go ahead.
Well, Pokemon, it touches on some very dark, disturbing things, mainly in the Pokédex.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing that some of those things play out in the campaign, not necessarily as they appear in the Pokédex, just something along that line, I think it could be very interesting. It is a kids series. It's not the same as Mass Effect and Dragon Age, which is rated M. I mean, this is a kids series, so. But hey, if you can find a way to make it work, then I say go for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess one of my initial expectations for this campaign actually was the typical kind of Pokemon storyline with, like a kind of big bad group or whatever, and then that sort of thing. But throughout that, with like the Pokedex entries like actually being things, because even though they're in the games, they're like never touched on. The fact that some Pokemon like drag children off, that's never addressed. Things like that.
No.
Or just how, Team Rocket or all the other big, the bad guys, the gang groups or whatever, they're always portrayed as silly, but in the real world, they would actually be like a legitimate threat and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's
there would be terrorists in the real world.
Pardon?
Yeah.
There would be terrorists in the real world. Like most of them are like
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
attacking places and
Well,
murdering
I just
people.
imagine someone having like a Wailord in a Pokeball, and then they throw it into a Pokemon Center, and then there goes the Pokemon Center, because Wailord is huge. Things like that, and how terrifying the move Leech Seed actually is, and things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't have any specific like instances aside from those, I guess. But I'm open to getting more adult with everything.
Okay. So just to talk about the universe itself. So this is going to be an alternate universe from the canon game. It's going to be based more in the game than the anime, because I have not been able to follow the anime nearly as much as I have the games overall. But our universe is going to be similar to ours. It's going to be in the Kanto region, as I said. It's going to have more of a realistic feel. I'm not gonna like throw dark things in just for the sake of throwing something dark and mature, but more of like looking at it from realism as much as possible, with the idea that there's still supernatural, paranormal things going on.
Did you read my comment?
I did, Riz.
Good.
But honestly, that's what I was going for even before I read your comment.
Oh no, of course. I'm just glad that we agree as always.
Yes, the world is going to be grittier. not all Pokemon are good. Just like not all people are good, not all people are bad. In the series, they keep saying there's no evil Pokemon, it's just evil trainers. And I'm like, BS. In this world, there's bad Pokemon. There's some bad Pokemon in this world, too. For apparently Pokemon that steal, kidnap children away. So
Yeah, like Hypno, they're fine.
I was just going to say, there's like a Pokemon called Honedge, and basically it's like, oh, if you touch it handle, it will suck your soul out. And you die.
Things like that, yes.
Like,
Now the people as a whole might be naive and might believe that there's no evil Pokemon. That I can probably play a lot with. That there are a lot of people that are a little bit more naive about those kind of things, like Pokemon can't do no wrong. But that's probably not going to be the case in reality. The other thing, it's darker, I guess, and I mentioned this to the players privately, is the idea that there are no other animals besides Pokemon, which means that in your diet, if you are a meat eater, you're eating Pokemon. And one of the things that we probably are going to explore really early on is the morality of that, the PC-ness of that. Which Pokemon are you allowed? There's probably going to be a Pokemon that's illegal to consume. But who decides where that line is, right? Like who dictates, who gets to decide which Pokemon is okay to consume and which ones are not okay to consume, things like that. And I was asking people, like, honestly, do you see yourself as a vegetarian or a vegan versus a meat eater? And happily, I think it's more realistic. About 50% of the group said that they would still be eating meat. Even knowing that they are Pokemon. You were raising your hand, Riz. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was a good boy. I was actually wondering about that. Like, are we going to say there are no, like, real-life animals then? Just because, and I ask because in the games, even, like, in Pokedex descriptions, it references real animals, like, coexisting. But obviously, you never see any.
You never see any of them.
Not, like, in the anime. Like, maybe a bird. Like, and that's it. But
yeah. I'm going to say that there are no, like, animals as we know it in the real world.
Cool.
They're Pokemon. Yeah. Just to make it simpler.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So there's things like that. As far as the government is concerned, I mean, ask me questions, because by you asking me questions about the universe, it helps you prepare, and it also helps me to think of things that maybe I haven't thought of. You might ask me a question, be like, oh, I didn't think about that.
I was just wondering, how do people treat psychics in your version of the Pokemon
good question.
world? I'm not sure if they are.
Yes. I am, just for plot, I'm leaning towards this universe to people are very wary and untrustworthy of psychics in general, similar to how people see mages in Dragon Age. Just because, when you have somebody who has the ability to move things with their mind or read your mind, that can make a lot of people nervous, regardless of whether or not it's the norm. I probably will make it so that not everyone and their mother is psychic. I mean, I think psychics are going to be about as prevalent as mages are in Dragon Age. So they exist, but they're not, they're not a lot of them. I haven't decided if it's something genetic. Maybe it's something that's genetic. I haven't figured out what laws there are with psychics. I'm assuming there's going to be there's going to be obvious laws, like if you're psychic, then people are going to be watching you in the casinos, things like that. That does add a new dimension to how I think that specific group are treated in the society. So that's something that you as a character need to decide for yourself. I think it would be unrealistic if all four of you, who is not Ella's character, I think it'd be unrealistic for all four of you to find out she's a psychic and be like, oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
She's psychic. She's still trustworthy. Some of you, I think, should have some reservations.
So that judge over there, can you influence them for me?
Yeah.
Like, I imagine, some people would have different opinions depending what type of psychic they are, or whether or not they can just read minds, or...
Correct.
do telekinesis or both? Like,
I feel like the psychics are going to be right now. What I'm thinking is that if you are a psychic, like you have to be registered as a psychic.
I was gonna ask him,
Like-
is this kind of the Avengers thing where they have to?
Yes, I think so. I think that just for this everybody's safety, it's for your safety too. It's for your safety too, Noir, that you should register as a psychic, and there's probably some sort of test that they've determined to find out whether or not you're just a telepath, if you're just a telekinetic, if you're both, and they probably have levels. I'll probably have to come up with something like if you're an L2 versus an L3 and all that good stuff. And that way, and it might, and to be quite honest, like maybe you're in a society where you have to visually have something like the star that the Jews had to wear. You might have to visually wear something so that people knows that you're psychic. I don't know yet. I haven't figured that out. But I think that would be a really interesting story plot if you were supposed to show that you're psychic, but you're not.
everyone does.
You know, I'd like to think that that's just an accepted thing in society, that if you're psychic, that you have to have something that shows that you're psychic. I don't know, but I haven't confirmed that yet. So
Yeah, the way that I had played Cassie in the interview that we had, was kind of along the idea that like she tolerated, like, because obviously she's aware of it and kind of just tolerated the existence of it. So like she approached Madame Vu with skepticism. But then I think her biggest thing is like, as long as you don't mess with me with your powers, then we're fine, kind of thing.
yeah.
So, like mind reading, she would not be a fan of if she thought that she was going to be, victimized by that.
Yeah.
But yeah, because that would be a really interesting dynamic. What about like traveling regulations and things like that? Considering now we don't have to rely upon vehicles or whatever, but there's all sorts of transportations, whether flying Pokemon or, like a Tauros or things like that. Do you have anything in mind?
Yeah, I'd like to believe, so with traveling, in this universe, we have 10-year-olds that are leaving the house and going all around the world and, trying to being a Pokemon master. And the adults have very strong, especially parents of these kids, have very strong opinions of this practice. So that means that technically you can have a 10-year-old just flying around on a Pidgey or Pidgeot willy-nilly in the skies. So yes, I think there will be traffic regulations. I think that part of the process of becoming a person that is trying to become a Pokemon master and going through all the gyms, I think you have to have some sort of a license to do that. I believe so. I don't think that any 10-year-old can just decide on a whim that they're just going to leave the house. I think that they need to have some sort of psychological, physical tests.
Was that kind of like how in the games they have it, you actually can't use fly or surf until you have, like, you beat a certain gym, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think technically something like that. So, yes, I think that Yes. I think that as a 9-year-old, you might start, taking, sort of like going to driving school. They start taking your driving. The 9-year-olds might have like a Pokemon trainer test if they want to become a Pokemon trainer.
So young.
And then, I know. And then if they pass the test, then they can apply for their license, like the driving test. And then if they pass, then they're allowed to legally go off on their own as a little 10-year-old child.
Okay.
To go,
as long as the parents are cool with it.
I think that realistically, also, I think you need to have your parents' permission. I think we would have a problem if the parents were not given permission to allow their child to do that, which means that some children might decide to try to illegally go to all the gyms. I can see a lot of fake IDs, like fake licenses being made. It's like, I can make this for you so you can go to this gym and like, without your parents knowing, nobody will know. So
and looking at the games too, again, like pointing at the kindergartners and trainers like that young, like they're not at the normal like 10-year-old age. Maybe that's kind of like a Facebook thing where you have to be 13 years old to sign up unless you lie. Like
yeah, unless you lie. Yeah. I can see some underage trainers.
Or just the parents who don't care and like, yeah, go ahead.
Whatever.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. I like. See, these are all really good stuff.
You're welcome.
So I was just looking through the Pokédex for the Tabletop United system, and I was wondering, how are we going to handle egg moves?
Also curious about this.
By handling egg moves, you mean like breeding Pokemon to have specific moves? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like there are certain moves that I would like Bullet to have, but then I looked in the Pokédex, and it turns out some of those moves are specifically egg moves. So I was
I
wondering.
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with your Pokemon naturally having egg moves. I would say that I would limit it to having one egg move that they were born with. If you want to have another egg move in addition to that one, I'll take it by a case basis. Just tell me this is the other egg move I want to have, and I feel like, okay, that's cool. Most likely I'll just say yes, but I just wanted to look at it first.
Yeah, I actually looked at egg moves a little bit too, and one of my concerns with it was like in the games, yeah, they're just born with that move, but in this system, we probably have to scale certain attacks so they're not overpowered right away, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll look into that like more when we really delve super hard into this.
Yeah.
But in that
we're about
case,
to create our characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Too.
So in that case, do we want to kind of like say they inherently have the ability for whatever that egg move is, but it might be kind of like dormant for the time being?
I'm happy with that too. Yeah, because if there's an egg move that's really powerful, I might say not necessarily have it be dormant, but maybe it's a weaker version of it.
Oh, so they
Like,
do
does
have
less
it right
damage.
away.
It depends. Like I said, I have to see what you guys come up with.
Okay.
I have to see what your power sets are. Again, this is not a combat heavy campaign, so like I'm not really all that strict on like what moves you do or don't have, because it doesn't come up in the game often enough for it to really matter if somebody's Pokemon has really that much more powerful of a set than the others. So most likely I'll just say yes to whatever it is you guys want to do power-wise with your Pokemon. Most likely.
I was thinking maybe they could have the egg move, but it wouldn't be unlocked until a certain level.
Yeah, I can do that too.
That was what I meant by
Yeah.
dormant.
Yeah, the dormancy thing. That's fine too. That's a good question. Religion is going to be a thing in this universe. Obviously, you can decide for yourself if your character is even religious in the first place, or at least spiritual. There is a pantheon. Right now, by default, I'm having it roughly based on the pantheon in that book, the PTU book that I sent you guys. So as far as the legendaries go, at least in the upper pantheon, there's only one of that Pokemon, and that Pokemon is that deity. So there are going to be, religious groups that do worship specific Pokemon, much like in Dungeons and Dragons, where there's a pantheon and different clerics might have a patron Pokemon or god that they adhere to. The interesting about that system is that there are accounts of actually meeting these Pokemon and seeing these Pokemon in the flesh. So there is a belief these are real. Whether or not the people believe them to be gods or not is, up to society. So I think that'll be an interesting dynamic in the story. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we go, we need to figure out who each other's Pokemon is going to be. Yeah. Let's do that first, because we're gonna start making our characters afterwards. So just let's go around the room, and could each of you briefly tell us a little bit about your Pokemon? And I specifically told them to keep things relatively vague and open to interpretation, so that whoever takes control of their Pokemon has, creative freedom to make that Pokemon their own. But if there are very important things about your Pokemon that you would like to try to maintain, you can express it here. Like the eyelashes, for example. So who would like to go first and talk a little bit briefly about their vision for their Pokemon?
My thought was basically just Cuddle Monster, to sum it up. But you could also think of it as just this sort of, obliviousness or naivete, or even just like an unconditional innocent sort of love, where just bubbly and
Bubble, okay.
yeah, related to the did bubbly work for you? None of that other stuff. So part of what I imagined for the relationship was at first it was, you know, it was strained between, okay, do we want to call her Ivy or Fern? That's another thing we should decide. And I guess,
It's your Pokemon, Riz.
all right, I guess we'll go with Fern then, sure.
And Fern is an Alolan Vulpix?
Yeah. Unless
Okay.
anyone who wants to play her really wants Ivy, because I'm cool with that. But yeah, we'll go with Fern for now. So her relationship with Cassie was originally strained, at least on Cassie's part, because again, the whole like evolutionary stone sort of thing, and two, the ties with Team Rocket. But over time, and so it depends on where we start in Cassie's timeline. So that's what we'll decide later on. Over time, yeah, Cassie did, you know, come to like her, partly because even when like, you know, Cassie just wouldn't respond to any of the playfulness or anything, you know, of like, you know, Fern like started nuzzling her legs, would just nudge her off, you know, Fern would just like come back and start again sort of thing, where eventually she would warm up. So that's what I envision right now.
I think Bullet and Molly. Bullet sees Molly almost like a mother because she did help raise him when he was an orphan. But just like any mother-son relationship, the son can be very rebellious sometimes. So in Bullet's case, I see him as being very naive, because I feel like up to this point, he and Molly have never had any problems with him flying up to a random person to say hello, and there's never been any negative repercussions of that. So I feel like he is friendly to a fault. So he will go up and he won't understand that someone might be dangerous. He'll just see a new person and fly up to greet them. So this could cause some problems, obviously, in the campaign. But what I hope will happen with him is that he'll eventually mature and realize that he does need to be more careful. And kind of in Molly's sense, I hope that she will realize that she doesn't have to be so careful. So kind of a role reversal for them, I would say.
So I think Lux is he's going to have connection issues. He's going to have trust issues with people in general. That might be tied to the past because of the way he was found. And I would say that it's not that he doesn't want to make connections. I think Lux wants to make connections. He just doesn't really either he doesn't know how, or he's just afraid to make the connections because of the past. I think the relationship with Lux and Chase, I think they both really care for each other, but they don't really show it to each other. I think I had in the write-up is something like they both want to keep an eye on each other, and you don't really know who's protecting who and for what cause. They seem to understand why they need to look after each other, but they don't demonstrate or they don't outwardly show it, especially when other people are around. So they might be intimate when they're alone, like they'll share thoughts and stuff like that, but in very short sentences. And it's more like show, don't tell with the relationship between them both.
So much of how I see you is just Tiffany this is the person that found me. This is the person that hatched me. They take care of me. I want to do everything to make sure this person is happy. So he is watching her all the time, which is where the fake eyelash story came from. It's like, I really like this. I hope whoever ends up playing him also likes this.
Well, I see Remy Fennekin being a little similar to Roma's like relationship to her Crobat, like very mother-son-like, but it's more like adopted mother type thing. Like she raised Remy, but they're close, but they're not as close as they could be because Noah's very closed off. So it's like, hey, why don't you actually tell me what's wrong? You keep saying you're fine, but you're not. I notice. And it's like, no. And it's like, grr! And maybe she's a little bit too like, oh, you don't want to go in Pokemon fights, do you? Like, that's really dangerous. Like, you could get hurt. And it's like, oh, why are you holding me back from doing fun, exciting things?
Cool. Okay. So now that we've heard about every single Pokemon, I want this to just be an open discussion, open forum. Who would like to share which Pokemon they're interested in, and we'll figure out how to assign them through that. Just discuss amongst ourselves.
I'd like Lux if no one else wants, or sorry, not saying that like, well, if no one absolutely wants this Pokemon, that's not what I'm saying. This is my first choice. I just like the idea of identity issue.
I'm kind of leaning toward Ooh or Fern at the moment, because I'm also interested in Lux, but like I mentioned before in the chat, Lux and Molly I feel have kind of similar attachment issues, and I would like to play a Pokemon who is fundamentally different from Molly, and Ooh and Fern being so friendly and kind of oblivious and so lovey-dovey, I think that would be very very fun to play in terms of just playing Molly as a serious one, but then playing a very friendly Pokemon.
Yeah, and I think I'll piggyback on that, but for opposite reasons. I think Remy or Bullet would be my primary choices. Remy probably more because I feel like he's the most rebellious of all the Pokemon, and he can really position himself as the one that can either get them all into trouble or get results. And I think all the other Pokemon are so attached to their partners that bond would make it difficult for one of the Pokemon to act as a leader, act as the action goer. So Remy really shines for that. I think Bullet would also counter Chase in regards of, I think I see him as a mischief Pokemon, like someone who causes trouble naively, and I like the idea of like having that thing that catalyst, for storytelling, and I think that's very counter to Chase. Chase will always hover in the background. He'll act only when he has to react, for the most part. So maybe a Pokemon that's a little bit more aggressive on either from a naive standpoint like Bullet or proactive stance like Remy.
Well, that works great because I was leaning toward Bullet.
There we go.
You were leaning toward Bullet.
So if you're more Remy,
you were the only one that we were waiting on there, Riz. So I think you might have just finished this all off.
See, that was the thing. Like, I was waiting because I know that we had all discussed it before on Discord, and you all voiced like either this or this, and so I'm like, well, I think I'm gonna be the kind of decision maker at least for part of it. So, I think this way we all have our Pokemon. I mean, are you satisfied? That leaves either you or Fern left, depending on.
Yeah,
Ella
hasn't said what she wanted.
Yeah.
So which were one of the ones that you were thinking about, Ella?
Either Fern or Bullet, because they're so different from my character.
See,
like,
I remember.
Be like a breath of fresh air. I'd be like, oh, I can be happy and not jaded. Yeah.
So right now it's looking like Petra has Lux. Nobody's is fighting Petra for Lux. It looks like 3 people really want Bullet. Bullet's a really popular Pokemon, Roma. Congratulations. 3 people want Bullet, but it sounds like out of the 3 people who want Bullet, Riz seems to strongly want Bullet. Shay is Remy or Bullet. Ella is Fern or Bullet. Whereas Roma is Fern or Ew. So right now I'm seeing Roma getting Ew, Ella getting Fern, Riz getting Bullet, and Shay getting Remy. That's what I'm seeing. Unless people want to fight or Pokemon battle for Bullet. People are okay with that?
I think this works out well.
Okay.
I mean, everyone gets at least one of their top 2 preferences, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Roma gets Ew, Ella gets Fern, Riz gets Bullet, Shay gets Remy, and Petra gets Lux. Okay, awesome. Excellent.
This went
So
well.
we now have our assignment for Pokemon Spectrum. I'm super pumped. So so guys, thank you very much for watching our session 0. We're just gonna go off camera now to start building our characters, and we look forward to seeing you guys in session 1. So hopefully you guys are pumped for that, and we will see you then. Until then, love yourselves and love each other. Bye.
Bye.